Okay, welcome to the Design Review Committee. We're going to do roll call.
Okay, can you all hear me?
Yes.
Okay. Do we have committee member Baranek?
Yes,
Oh, great. There you are.
I'm here. I'm
Yay.
struggling with the video at the moment.
Okay, well, we can hear you loud and clear, so that's good. Vice Chairperson Funk,
Yes,
Committee Member Schmidt,
Yes, ma'am.
Committee Member Vanden Eyck,
Yes.
and Chairperson Newsom.
Yes.
So we have all present. Thank you.
Okay. Can I get an approval of agenda?
so move.
I'll second that.
Okay, roll call. Vice Chairperson Funk,
Yes,
Committee Member Vanden Eyck,
Yes.
Committee Member Baranek,
yes,
Committee Member Schmidt,
Yes.
Chairperson Newsom.
Yes.
Motion passes 5-0.
Okay. At this time, I'm going to open it up to public comment, and it's going to be public comment for anything that is not listed on the agenda this afternoon. Do we have anybody that's called in or is on the webinar that would like to speak? Raise your hand. And it looks like we just have two. There we go. Two members. Garrett, did you want to speak or are you here for the agenda item? It's like his hand went down.
Yeah. Okay. Oh, I'm gonna.
Okay, Garrett, can you hear us?
Yeah, I'm here for the Dawson project.
Okay, we're gonna have you hold your comment until after we close public comment for it's for anything not on agenda. So we'll give you a moment to speak on that project review item in a short minute. What's the call-in number? Because it's different listed on mine. It looks like it's an out-of-state number. Is that where anybody calls in if they want to speak? Just 669.
We'll get you that in just a sec. Look, do you have that, Mariah, that call in to verify it?
It's the 669 number.
Oh, thanks, Annette.
It's 669-900-6833.
Okay, and that's for anybody who wants to call in.
And if anyone does call in, they just need to hit *9 to raise their hand.
Thank you. I always forget that little nuance, especially when I'm the one that's calling in. I have technical issues and nobody knows what to turn on and turn off. Okay. Have anybody call in yet? All right, I guess I'll close public comment at this moment. We're going to move on to the agenda item, design and neighborhood compatibility review. Oops, hold on. Did I miss something?
consent calendar.
Sorry, consent calendar. Can I ask for approval of the May 13th draft minutes? Sorry.
So move.
I'll second.
Annette, do we need a roll call?
Yeah, it's still muted in it.
Can you hear me now?
Yes.
Okay. Vice Chairperson Funk,
Yes,
Committee Member Schmidt,
Yes.
Committee Member Baranek,
yes,
Committee Member Vanden Eyck,
Yes.
Chairperson Newsom.
Yes.
Motion passes 5-0.
Thank you. Now I can move on to our review item. This will be the design and neighborhood compatibility review of an addition to a multifamily colonial home at 7200 Navajo Avenue. And at this point, I'm going to have to step down and recuse myself because I live within the noticed area, and I'm going to ask Vice Chair Susan Funk to chair it for me. And Susan, you can call or text me when you're ready for me to return, and I'll turn off my video.
okay.
And I'll let everybody do ex parte and get the meeting started. So see you guys
Okay.
shortly.
Thank you very much, Madam Chair. Okay, does anyone have ex parte to disclose? My only ex parte is that I took my lunch hour today to do a quick site visit. So I did do that, which may mean that I'm eating a little bit of lunch occasionally during the meeting. Folks should feel free in the meetings I chair to do the same. Okay, then let's hear from staff. Mariah, are you presenting this one?
Oh, you're muted, Mariah.
I muted myself. Yeah, let me go ahead and share my screen here. Oops. The beginning. Okay, can everyone see my screen?
Yes.
Yes.
Wonderful. Yes. So this is the design review of an addition to a multifamily residence at 7200 Navajo Avenue. The project number is PRE 21-0063. So just looking at an aerial view of the site, it does actually look a little bit different, and we'll kind of talk about why, but this is a little bit of an older aerial. The zoning is multifamily, it's RMF 10 or medium density multifamily, and the property is about 0.7 acres. A little bit of background about this site. The Design Review Committee did review a project back in January 2019 for 2 new multifamily units that were built above a garage. And that project also included some new parking and landscaping on the site, which is home to a colony home. So the existing site is on the Historical Society's list of historic structures. This means they were built between 1913 and 1927. The structure's integrity has been well preserved over the years, which we'll talk about. But one of the reasons we want to review this, in addition to it being a multifamily addition, is because the Secretary of Interior standards signified that historic structures should be preserved, or the features of a historic structure should be preserved. So here we can actually see the site. You can see that the key historic features, such as the deep porch, that front dormer up there with the windows, the wide window trim, the groupings of windows, and as well as the horizontal siding, they've all been well preserved, and those are all features of a historic home of this time. So here's another photo of what it looks like today. You can see the new structure that was reviewed by the Design Review Committee in 2018 has similar features and is compatible with that existing colony home. So I should also mention that that the new residences and that new structure, they have not been finalized yet. So there's still a little bit of work to do. The applicant's still improving the landscaping, and I think there are some driveway improvements that are yet to be done, but that's almost complete, just not quite. So to move on to the project being proposed today, it is a 1,053 square foot addition. So the first floor includes a kitchen and a pantry. This is 392 square feet. And then it also includes an attached 344 square foot covered porch. The second floor is 661 square feet, and this includes a new large master bedroom. So here's the site plan. You can see how it differs a little bit from the aerial I showed you before, but this is just going straight onto the back of the existing residence. You can see in the red box there at the bottom. So moving on to the design, they're keeping consistent with the existing home with groupings of hung windows, that wide window trim, and a consistent color scheme of green siding with the white trim. Instead of the horizontal siding. It will be a vertical siding. There's going to be some ornamental woodwork along the roof line. And then the new covered porch includes an overhang and a painted wood fascia, as well as some additional siding on that. So we can look at that here. This is the front elevation. This is facing Navajoa. This is what's existing today, and there are no changes proposed to the front here. So this is the rear. This is going to be facing the home in the back. And so you can see the porch is covering the first floor. And then you can see that has that vertical siding. This is looking from the south. This is the side actually facing an adjacent property, facing the neighbor. So you can see it has those groupings of windows, those hung windows, and again, the vertical siding. And then this is the other side. This is facing the interior of the site. So this is really facing more of the parking area for the new residences. Staff did want to bring up this blank wall. Typically, we don't want to see blank walls that are this large. In talking to the applicant, you know, they mentioned that the interior, the floor plan on the first floor is a closet, and on the second floor is a closet, and on the first floor is a pantry. So we had suggested, you know, maybe we can add some windows, but that would be a discussion we want to have with the design review committee, because windows in a pantry or a closet might not be the best option here, but we were thinking also maybe some kind of architectural feature or landscaping just to break it up a little bit. So that's one of the things that we want the DRC to particularly comment on. And here we can see that first floor plan. At the top there, you can see there's that large pantry. That's where that the large blank wall, that's the side it's on. And then this is the second floor plan. And again, that's the closet up there on the top along that blank wall. So to bring back the discussion items, we would like some feedback from the design review committee about the architectural design of the proposed addition and its compatibility with the existing colony home, in particular that blank wall that's facing the interior of the site. And then in talking to the applicant, they're planning on going with the green color that matches or complements the existing house, but we just want to add a condition that that's something that's going to be reviewed by staff during the building permit process, which they've started, so we'll be requiring that. And staff is available for questions.
Okay, thank you, Mariah. Dennis.
Yeah, a couple of questions, and I just comment on first at the beginning, and I know it's a multifamily zone, but this house is really was a colony home. It was a single family home. It's in fact, it's not a multifamily house at this point. So I just want to note that. We had a discussion recently about the zoning code and changes that we were making with respect to the ADU law. In other words, I think the multifamily zone had some quirky wording that said that you had to max out the RMF density before you could place an ADU. And I note that one of the buildings on the unit, on the property, is called an ADU. And I'm wondering how that is occurring, if it's in, or is that just being at this point because we're making changes, it was overlooked, or what, do you know?
So that's just, I have it up here. So it's just noted on the plan there, ADU, but they are actually there's two units. They're two new multifamily units, so they're not technically ADUs.
Simply the applicant's labeling, it's not really a true accessory dwelling unit in accordance with the state ADU law.
Okay. Why the proposal for the vertical siding?
I can answer that if you'd like.
Yeah.
I think one of staff's comments was to differentiate the addition from the original construction which is generally consistent with what the Secretary of Interior standards ask for. They ask for compatibility, but they also ask that new additions clearly be new additions and not try to be an exact match of the historic fabric.
Oh,
There's many facets in the Secretary of Interior standards that we really should look at for this kind of an addition. It's really, those standards are written really for preservation of that existing structure. And we want to make sure that through this process, we not only preserve the existing siding, the existing windows, but when you do a new addition, that it should complement the character of the house, but also we don't want to be able to come back 20 years from now and say, okay, that clearly was an addition. They didn't try to match the dimensional siding. And didn't try to match everything 100%. They tried to complement it. So that's the thought there. I think staff guided the applicant in that direction.
okay. Well, I didn't know that about the standards. To me, you would want to make things match and mirror as much as possible. For instance, I think the window, as I look at the south elevation, I think that the windows should be, if they can be, about the same size. I know there's different requirements now for access and so on.
Things like
Also,
that are key. The dimensions of windows and openings, I think, are key, and preservation of those existing windows are key as well. Since we're allowed with this house to use a historic building code, they can get some exceptions from Egress in utilizing that. But I will add that this is probably one of the largest additions to a colony home that I think we've seen in recent years. So it's a lot. It's difficult to see, I think, from staff's perspective, to see that this is compatible at all.
well, to me, it's not. And I mean, there are features such as the porch and some other things. There was a little bit of discussion about the other side that faces the inside. To me, on the original house, there's shed roofs about on some of the windows and the doorways and openings. To me, on that blank side, maybe a similar type pop out or something that would have a shed roof over top of it, and maybe you have storage or a hot water heater or something inside of it to make it functional. But I think it would dress up that one side. On this particular elevation, I'm confused about the new addition is reaching back into the gable of the home. So is that going to be gutted out, or what's happening there?
And that's probably a good question for the applicant and architect on how that matchup goes in terms of that roof gutter and the roof line, and how that flashing goes, and how that, maybe we have a roof plan we can look at and helps to illustrate that. Do you know if we have a roof plan at all, Mariah?
It's in your staff report. I didn't include it in the PowerPoint, but it's on page 15.
Oh, yeah.
But it doesn't show, that's the roof plan, but there, we're looking at this elevation, and there's a sliding window that's above the house, kind of in the center. So to me, that represents that there's a floor approximately on the existing home. There's a white line that's traveling left to right. And so to me, that looks like that would be about the elevation of a floor as I compare it with the window that's in that area. And so to me, it appears like they're gutting out some of the house so you can have a room within that area. But that's what's confusing about it for me.
Well, there's already a second story in this house that's in there, and that's what the dormers are for upstairs. But keep in mind, the original plan that the applicant wanted to do on his property was demolish the entire house and site. And so this is their second attempt, when they were told by staff that they had to preserve the historic residence.
Uh-huh. Okay, well, I mean, I know that other projects have been approved. I mean, on this property, the mass of that garage and stuff is to me not in character at all with the property. I kind of see the same with this, but then again, if the regulations are as you explained it, then I can understand why there's a distinction between the look of the two buildings. On your front view to the back where the porch is, there are the same as looks like it's true on the stuff that was handed out to us on the right hand side. Are those sliding doors? What's happening on the right hand side there?
Oops.
As I look at this space, okay, we have the
Are
windows
folding
in the
doors.
center.
Are those folding doors? Do we have?
Oh, yeah, the ones with the arrows, I believe those are like, I think they're like accordion doors. The architect, I believe, is on, and they might be able to elaborate more, but that's my understanding, or they slide.
And that's the entrance into this house is through those doors?
That would be, yeah, that would be the rear. So that would be the porch in the back.
So this is not a separate a separate unit. It can be access from the inside of the existing home.
Yeah, so this is the owner's home. So he lives here. He wants this addition for himself, and then he has those other 2 new units.
So it's this house is just it's an addition to the house then.
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
Mhm.
Other questions?
I have
Emily, go
one.
ahead.
Yes, just to clarify, I see that we've called out the total square footage added, both upper and lower floors, both finished and unfinished, the covered porch. What's the proposed total? Or what's the existing finished square footage, and what's the proposed total with the addition?
I'd have to look up what the existing is. I can find that and bring it back up. Or maybe the applicant could say, but I can find that and let you know.
That's my only question, just kind of digging more into the comment regarding compatibility of an addition of this size. Just wondering what the total increase in livable square footage is.
Other questions? Jeff, do you have anything you want to ask at this point?
Sorry. No, I don't have any questions yet.
Okay. I've got a couple of questions. One is historical. Do we have what kind of precedent are we working with in terms of other kinds of changes to colony homes, either for some period of time, or at least within recent memory?
Yes, within the recent few years, we have approved several additions and remodels to colony homes. One of them was actually on El Camino Real in the commercial district. It's a yellow colony home that's now used for a commercial business. They did do a dormer addition on the back, and they did an interior remodel, much smaller addition than this. There's one that's currently approved right now in San Ynez that they're under construction for. Again, it's more of an interior remodel and basement remodel, much smaller. So there has been several. There's one that actually had substantial fire damage that was on curb rail. So that one ended up getting demolished because the whole inside and framing was burned. And then was one other one that is on Tunitas that we allowed demolition of because it was a concrete block structure colony home, and the entire foundation failed, and the entire wall structure failed, and there was no way to repair it without taking the entire structure down and rebuilding it because it was a masonry structure that was unreinforced. So that one ended up getting demolished. But in terms of precedent, this is probably one of the more significant addition sizes I've seen in my many years of working historic preservation projects. When I worked for the city of San Luis Obispo, I did see many that were about this scale. I think that they were probably a little lower in roof height scale, but some of the things they're doing right here, they're doing it on the back and they're preserving the front facade. And if they can preserve the front facade and the original historic integrity of this structure, which includes the windows and the siding, then in general, they're following the Secretary of Interior standards. But the key thing for the city is to make sure that this addition isn't going to destroy the historic character of this structure. And so I think that's the key factor of the DRC review today. But we have done additions to Colony homes. This is just a little larger than I think what we're used to.
Okay, thank you. And then when I was visiting the property today at lunchtime, it looked to me like there were some of the neighboring residences that would have sight lines either from their windows or balconies onto the interior wall that was raised that is currently without windows on the, or is it, well, I described as interior, but it's the north facing or the wall that faces the other unit on the property that is currently blank. Does the staff have any sense of whether that's an accurate assessment, that there are other properties as well as the two units being built on this property that would have sight lines to that?
That would see
blank
that.
wall.
They would see
Yeah.
the wall without the windows. I think there are. Yeah, it's a multifamily neighborhood, so so it's possible. And sometimes these things look a heck of a lot better when they're built in 3 dimensions than they do in these flat plans. But certainly that, you know, in plan, an unadorned wall does look like it could use some additional architectural embellishment, i.e. windows or other features or something else to help that. Sometimes they can be simply solved by landscape, but yeah, there are other view sheds onto that.
Okay,
property.
and then this is probably a dumb question, but I'm not that familiar with the vertical siding that's involved here. And to me, when I think of vertical siding in flat spaces, I'm thinking of all the industrial buildings on Traffic Way that I drive by.
Well, actually, this kind of siding looks like board and bat, which was pretty common actually during this era. It was a real simple construction where they put boards and flat boards, and they put bat boards, which are 2 inches to cover the seams. In modern construction, sometimes this is done by using flat plywood and putting vertical sticks of wood to make it look like board and bat. But it is a style that was done pretty commonly even during this same era. It was a more affordable way to do construction. So it does kind of reflect that. So,
Okay.
but I think in plan, I see what you are saying here. In plan, it does look something that's more industrial, but in concept and reality, it actually looks a lot better than what you're seeing in this plan set.
I immediately thought T111.
T111?
It's a particular size.
Oh yeah, T111 was famous in the 60s and 70s. That doesn't look like T111, but I think the architect will chime in and tell you what that really is. T111 would not be the appropriate.
Well, you explained it
material.
well, though, Phil.
Okay.
Yeah, thank you. That was very helpful. Any other questions from the committee before we open it to the public, including the applicant?
I will say on that note from Phil, I would like clarification from the applicant that it is in fact board and bat, as I guess I assumed when I looked at it, but I don't see a note verifying that.
Good call.
Okay, thank you. At this point, then I'm going to open it up to public comment, and is our tradition on these kinds of projects. We first would like to recognize the applicant or someone presenting on the applicant's behalf. So if you wouldn't mind, maybe get to the raise hand functions. So Jerry Dawson is here. And if you would go ahead and let Jerry connect in.
Okay, hi, everybody. Thanks for having us.
Hi, Jerry.
Okay, so And I've been doing a little research on this. Originally, we went in with the idea of remodeling this house. Because of a roof leak, the discovery of asbestos throughout the house, lead paint, which of course everybody's got it. And with the structure, the foundation that has been compromised, we felt it was safer and cheaper, not only to us, but to the neighborhood by tearing it down. Now, you guys said no. Okay. What I wanted to do, okay, let's just do a little quick history on, and I'm not trying to change anything. I got two plans. I got this one that you're looking at. I got the original. The original plan is identical to the existing house, other than it meets every code there is, and it only adds 300 square feet. You would not know the difference between this new house and the one that was here originally. Now, this original house right here was shipped on the back of a truck from Sears and Roebuck. According to the state of California, it does not meet does not meet the historical qualifications in that it's not a famous architect. It's nothing famous happened here. A couple other things. It wasn't used for any historical anything. Okay, and that's the only thing I found. I asked, we're trying to find out if there's anything locally that would conflict that. So far, nothing. Okay, so part of the thing that we were told by, after I found out I couldn't do that, and I spent $15,000 on the plans to make this house really to look like it belongs here, I called the Historical Society. I offered them the house to move it. And they said, well, that's great. That sounds fantastic, but we don't have any money. I offered them 30 grand to move it so that this house is going to maintain it. It'll be a part of the city of Atascadero. It's so historic, they never came by to look at the house. Okay, so now we move ahead to today. Now, one of the things that was told to us, and I don't remember the fellow's name, was the new house, the addition should complement yet be easily identified as an addition. I think we've done that. Okay, you're not going to see any of it from the street, really. The wall that you're speaking of, that seems to be the big question between the apartments and garage and the new house, is in fact a master bedroom, closet, and a pantry. It's not even viewed. You won't be able to see it from the street once all the landscaping's in. You won't even see the back of the house. But these are the frustrations that I'm having. Now, granted, I've shot myself in the foot 100 times during this last project, but I haven't gotten a lot of help, or it seems like things were moved and it changed as our project went on. And as an example, you made me put an approach in between, you were there today, Susan, an approach in between the new house and the old house. I thought we had figured it out that because I'm building garages, I don't need a driveway. And I was told fire department access. I'm a fireman for 35 years. Every house should have a driveway to the back of the house based on that theory. It's simply not correct. It got to the point, I've been delayed. Like I said, I've shot myself in the foot, but I've been delayed at least 3 months by, I can't get someone out here to give us clarification. And it's wrong. It's dead wrong. Why do I have an approach there? It cost me $6 grand, and we just put it in just so we could move on and try to get our final. Those are the frustrations I'm having. Has nothing really to do with this project, but now the overreach is we need windows in my pantry and my closet. And I think you mentioned it, Susan. There's a privacy issue. And I think that's one of the reasons why we set it up that way, so that not everybody's looking into the neighborhoods, backyards, windows, kitchens, whatever. I think we've tried to respect everybody's privacy. And I think we've accomplished that. And I think since we started that project next door, if you looked at this street a year and a half ago, it's changed dramatically. People are buying, they're remodeling, doing their yards. I think, like I predicted, it's a positive impact on the neighborhood. So I don't know what you really need from me as far as windows, or, I mean, all it means is I get to go back to the architect. I don't know if he's here. He said he was going to be late, and redesign a window. And it's, again, it's going to cost me more money for something that I don't feel is in the overreach of the city. I think if it's out in front, 100%, and we've honored everything that you've done, what you've asked us to do, we've honored it and went more. We put more parking in. We've done all this stuff to be a good neighbor. My neighbors appreciate what's going on here. They love it. You can talk to them. Don't take my word for it. So yeah, I think it would be nice if we'd had something of a contour or something on that side. I don't know what that would be, but I'm not going to put a window in my pantry, in my closet. That's stupid. So I'm open, but I think at this point I've got $28,000 in plans, and I'm still not able to move forward. And then down the street, I don't know if you guys mentioned, I was trying to figure out the Zoom thing. This is my first Zoom, so I apologize if I'm all over the place, but I was down the street on Kuberil, I think that was mentioned. They tore that down. There was no, was that the one with the block foundation? Anybody?
Yeah, that in this phase of the comments, we can't answer, we can't be in dialogue with you. Sort of the ground rules for this kind of meeting is that we talk, you talk, and we listen, and then we'll have a discussion.
Okay.
You know, we can be a little bit less formal in DRC than say in the council meetings, but we also typically expect comments to be done within about 3 minutes.
Okay. I can be
So
done.
if you can,
I'm done.
can wrap up. There were 3 questions from the DRC that maybe you could help answer.
Okay.
So when you're done with the things that you want to tell us,
I'm done. I'll just
okay.
answer the questions.
Okay. One of them was about the second floor. Is that currently a living space, and is that going to be connected to the new living space?
So there is these large void areas on the second floor. So if you look at, if you look at the outside of the house where the dormer is, okay, let's look at the original floor or the original house. But where the dormer is at, right there is a wall, and that is a void space in that slope. It goes on both sides. So it's basically an attic space that you can stand up in. They made storage out of it, but there's nothing there.
Okay.
So our plan is to probably, I'm not an architect, I don't know if Jeff's here, is to remove that back part and make that livable and transition into the new addition. Does that make sense?
Okay. And I see nods from Member Baranek, and I'm hoping that answered her question on that.
Okay.
There was also a question about the nature of the doors onto the back porch.
Okay, they're accordion doors. They're all glass. It's just, yeah.
Okay. And then do you happen to know the square footage of the current house and the square footage that you'll have with the addition?
Well, the current house was right around 1,700 square feet. And with the new addition, I think it's like 2,600. I apologize, I don't have the exact number.
And is Jeff Schneiderite your architect by any chance?
Yes.
Okay, I see Jeff having joined the call. So if
he could probably answer that question.
Yeah, and Mr. Noel, we'll get to you in a second. Let me recognize Mr. Schneiderite here for a moment. If he would like to answer any questions here to clarify the square footage and the nature of the siding.
Can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you.
Yeah, I had a thing. I had to take this call by phone, so I'm not sure how well it works. But and because of that, I don't have the exact area, but I believe Jerry's correct. It's about 2,500 with the addition. And with regard to the siding we did pick because it is a historical style that purposefully did not look like the very well, crafted existing siding, which is virtually impossible to get. We felt that something like hardy plank or something like that would really be an affront to the existing siding versus having it appear to be a board and bat.
Okay, thank you. Were there other questions from the committee to the applicant or his architect?
Is the expansion of the building, is it triggering fire sprinklers or is it less than the 50% threshold?
It's my belief that the sprinklers will be required in the addition, but not the original.
And that's because of the historical ordinance that it can't go in there, or?
Right, that's my understanding of the historical code.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, thank you. And now I'd like to recognize Mr. Knoll, Garrett Knoll, whose hand is raised. And you're currently muted. So if you can unmute yourself so that we can hear you.
Not a problem.
There. Okay, now we can hear you.
All right. I just want to get some more clarification on that project that was down the street that had minimal fire damage and they were able to demolish the whole thing.
Okay.
Basically, there was fire damage on the building. They removed the external part of the building, maybe 2 4 feet up the side, removing the siding. The rest of the structure was fine. They were able to demo that whole building.
I had a little trouble hearing that. I don't know if anybody else did. Perhaps you could state that again for my benefit.
Sure. Can you hear me okay?
Yeah.
Let me get closer to that way. So the clarification, 2 questions of clarification. The house not meeting any of these state requirements, clarification, and also clarification on the project that was down the street that had minimal fire damage, nothing structural was burnt or damaged. They were able to demolish that structure. Did that come through clearly?
Yes, thank you. So understand that your understanding of the project down the street was that they were able to demolish the structure despite fire damage that seemed minimal.
Correct.
And okay. Anything else that you want to add at this time?
Yeah, just the clarification on the state requirements, as the house doesn't meet the state requirements.
Okay, thank you. So we'll, I'll make notes of that, and we'll, and then is there anyone on our call-in number?
I'm not seeing anyone else online.
Okay, and I'm seeing the only hands raised are people who have been recognized to speak. So I will close it off at this point for our public comment and bring it back to the committee for discussion. Let me first ask if staff can address the question regarding the house, or the concern about the house on Kerberell, whether you know anything more from the fire department about the damage that was there.
Yes.
Mm-hmm.
Yes, actually, I personally inspected that house on the interior with Mr. Eric Winslow, who was the owner of that house on Kerberell. And it did have substantial damage and needed replacement of many structural elements inside the house. The siding was heavily damaged, so they removed the siding to reveal the framing of the house, and much of the framing would have had to been rebuilt to be able to repair the house, in addition to the fact that there was no real foundation. It was a rock foundation. So the determination was made that the structure was a total loss. And instead, they rebuilt a structure to resemble the original historic structure instead of repairing what was left. And so that is what happened. So now that house has been reconstructed, following the Secretary of Interior standards for reconstruction. And there's a new home there that resembles the original home, but it's not a historic structure. So that's what happened in that scenario. So you are able to reconstruct non-surviving structures in accordance with the Secretary of Interior standards. This particular structure is a surviving structure and is a structure that qualifies for listing on the State Historic Register. And why does it qualify? Because it is a colony home that was built during the colony era of the Atascadero, which is a very substantial era for our city's history. And it's recognized by our general plan that was prepared in 2002. And it's recognized by the Atascadero Historical Society when they mapped and documented all of the colony homes. And that's a very significant part in California and national history because of the fact that Atascadero is one of few planned communities that were built by a master plan by E.G. Lewis around that time. And it reflects that era and the master planning of the community. So it's very, very significant, much different than just a home that reflects the craftsman style, which this is. It truly is a craftsman style home, but because it was built as a colony home during the colony era and reflects the remainder of those significant historic attributes of our community, it absolutely qualifies for listing on the State Historic Register and is recognized by our general plan as one of those homes. So we do absolutely need to follow those mandates, and it does also qualify for the Historic Building Code along with that. So those are very substantial issues that I wanted to definitely correct in the discussion that we've heard so far.
Thank you. Could you clarify a little further about what's the impact of it being because it's a historic structure, it's exempted from some building code requirements. Can you clarify what that is, or the
Historic Building Code offers some flexibility in terms of how you meet certain standards. And some of those standards include egress. And egress comes to how you can get out of a house in case of an emergency of a fire. In other words, the size of window openings, the size of stairwells, the size of door openings. That's the primary significant thing. There's also other things in terms of some of the structural exceptions and some of the other exceptions. I think Jeff Schneiderite can probably fill in the gaps there in terms of what flexibility the Historic Building Code offers. But the intent of the Historic Building Code is to be consistent with the Secretary of Interior standards by maintaining historic structures with their integrity, while at the same time maintaining those buildings in active use. Because if a building is not in active use, then the building leads to disrepair, and then the building ends up being lost. So the whole goal of the Secretary of Interior standards is allow buildings to continue living and being adapted and having additions done to them and keeping them alive, but at the same time keeping them in a state where they reflect the historic integrity of what they originally intended to be. And this is certainly one of those structures that fits within that, and it's very important to our community.
Thank you. Okay, committee members, thoughts on this? Questions or thoughts? Don't everybody speak at once.
So
Again, just want to clarify, I heard board and bat looking, but I still haven't heard confirmation that will in fact be board and bat siding and not something like P111 that's intended to look like board and bat.
Okay. Let me gather up our other any other questions that we have for the applicant, so that I'll reopen public comment and let them address that.
I thought the architect was clear that it was going to be board and bat, as Phil had explained it.
that's what I thought too.
Yeah, and I thought it was a siding that is designed to look like board and bat, but it's
Yes.
not.
Right.
Yeah.
Well, the hardy plank that would look like board and bat.
There's some dimension to it. It's just not flat.
Okay.
I would just, yeah, I'd like to get clarification because there is a hardy that is a like a vertical kind of scored vertically like a T111, and then there's board and bat, which would be a hardy either smooth or textured, and then has the battens added as Phil described. I just want to clarify because I do want to make sure that there is dimension to it.
Okay, any other questions that anybody has for the architect or applicant? If not, that's probably an architect question. So maybe you could bring I'll reopen comment, Mr. Schneiderite, bring him back on and let you address that question.
Sure, yeah, I believe that we, on these plans, did call out for a substrate that is like a hardy panel, but it would have full sized battens on it to give it that 3D effect. So it will be have vertical dimension to it and not be flat. This is also, you know, it's a better and longer lasting fit than, you know, actual boards, which, you know, start cracking and stuff like that. And it would have its three degree or 3D element to it. So not T111 and not flat.
I've seen that exact type of construction done to simulate board and bat, and it's actually quite successful. And it is weatherproof and long lasting because it's a cementatious material, and it's a good replication of board and bat. I would agree.
Okay, did that address your question then, Emily?
Yes.
Okay. And since I've reopened public comment, is there anything else, Mr. Schneiderite, while you've got the floor, anything else that you would like to add to our considerations? My question for you would be, are there other options? What options would there be to add something that breaks up the solid vertical nature of that one wall without creating undue costs or drainage issues or other issues for the way that that wall fits in the design?
A couple of things, possibly the addition of a belly band along the floor line would help break that up. And traditionally, possibly a little trellis along the lower floor level. It wouldn't make sense to have it up high. You know, we'd rather not have windows, and windows would destroy the purpose, you know, in the place, especially in the closet. But I think that a belly band would at least break up the long battens, and if need be, some kind of trellis that matches the outriggers of the structure might help break that up.
Okay, thank you.
Sure.
And then Mr. Knoll, I see your hand still raised on the Zoom. Were you wishing to make additional comments, or is that just hanging out from before? And it looks like we've lost Mr. Dawson.
Does look like Jerry fell off. I think Garrett Knoll re-raised his hand, so
I was just checking. My question is regarding the Title 24 stuff for the existing structure. So what are the guidelines for historic houses and Title 24 as far as replacing windows and making sure that, you know, my client's not burning up a bunch of energy trying to heat or cool his house?
And can you also clarify your relationship to the applicant?
Yeah, I'm the contractor.
Ah, okay, thank you. Okay, at this point, then I will reclose public comment. bring it back to staff and ask if they can address anything further to the contractor with regard to Title 24.
One item I'd like to bring up as staff is regarding windows. Windows are a critical element of the historic architectural theme. And if they plan to replace these original historic windows, staff would normally require that they replace the windows with a historically accurate window. That means a wood window. We often hear strong objection to that because of the cost of those. And we often see people want to put in white vinyl windows that are dual glazed that may have a higher energy rating, but do not reflect the historic character of the structure. This is a constant battle. The Historic Building Code does allow you flexibility on that issue. And just, I would ask that the DRC, if they're going to move forward with the approval of this addition, that there be conditions added that speak to that particular topic. Because the building code can allow flexibility on that issue if we find that is a historic architectural or architecturally contributing feature of that structure. And when an original window is properly restored and properly fitted, it can also be very energy efficient. But it's wall insulation and roof insulation and floor insulation that's really the biggest deal in terms of bang for the buck, in terms of how this residence is going to feel inside in the future. But they can also do dual glazed windows, but we're going to ask for a window that meets the standards that make it look like the original windows in terms of its appearance and in terms of its size and appearance and its wood or wood clad type construction, which is going to be a little more expensive than the white vinyl window that you would normally get at a low cost Home Depot or something like that. So.
Okay. Can you, I'm not clear about what conditions, what it is you are suggesting that we include conditions with regard to the nature of the windows in the existing structure, the nature of the windows in the new structure, what?
In the existing structure, not in the new structure. The new structure has additional flexibility. The window size and the window openings should complement the existing structure. But what we're talking about here is the existing structure, especially the front and front side facades of the structure. And I don't think we have any conditions of that nature in the report that's published for you now. I think it's an issue that we didn't get into that level of detail yet.
Okay, so it's mostly a question of avoiding misunderstandings that would be further delay the project and be costly to the applicant by making sure that they know what's going to be required if they're thinking about changing out any of the existing
correct.
windows.
Yes.
Okay, thanks for clarifying that. As I'm looking at this, this is a busy neighborhood with RMF10 zoning and a lot of people there together. So this is not a colony home that is up on a pedestal that has a big impact on the surrounding community, nor does it have very broad. It has some visibility to neighbors, and there's to be conscious of what this is presenting to those neighbors, but it's not. It's not as prominent visually in the community as is some of our other colony homes. I'm also looking at, it's a home. We still want this to be a neighborhood of people, building the lives that they want to have with their families, and we want to find a way while respecting historical character and the elements of our general plan to allow the applicant to keep it a livable, workable home, a real, an active residence, within that context. So I'm looking to that. I see in the elevation that's visible right now on Zoom that there's a line that Dennis was pointing out earlier would appear to be the floor of that second floor, or consistent with a floor. So a belly band would be something that would sort of continue a horizontal line like that across on the other elevation, consistent with a floor. Yes, so you can see that there's a line, that there's a similar line on the existing structure on this side as well. So I kind of, I like the idea of being, that it continues to trouble me, the sense that, large, flat, horizontal wall spaces tend to look industrial. And that's out of character with, with the neighborhood. But I think with some minimal, something to visually break that up, that, windows wouldn't be the only option. And I think the idea of a belly band and a terrace would make that non-intrusive to the neighborhood, and would make me a lot more comfortable with it. Dennis, go ahead.
Yeah, I think that, this is a good elevation to consider. Again, on the Colony home, we have these two pop outs that are along this wall. And they have windows. I agree with the client, the applicant, talking about not wanting windows. That's totally understandable. However, if you were to have like a landscape trellis that just hanging off that wall that has the same pitch as those roofs over those pop outs, or again, like I was saying before, a pop out that could be something functional, maybe storage of trash could be in it or something. I don't know, but I suggested maybe a water heater, and obviously it's not needed, but I do think we could carry these pop out roofs on that wall, and again, maybe have a trellis in which vines can grow up on or something that replicates those things on that wall.
That's an interesting option. Comments from either the other two of you?
Yeah. As I look at these, I look at plans every day, all day long. And to me, honestly, it doesn't look, it actually looks like a very nice plan. And considering the street elevation, I don't think a lot of this will even be seen from the street. Even the back portion, they have covered parking for the adjacent, the duplex that he has next door. They're not going to see that wall. So I don't really have an issue with that. Plus, it's back behind those bump outs. So even from the street, the bump outs would protect the view. I honestly don't think you'd see it very much. But if that is the decision of the DRC to ask for some kind of a amenity that on the side for a trellis or something like that, I could support that. Overall, I don't think it detracts from the character. In fact, I think that our colony homes need to be lived in, and if they're not brought up to modern standard or the size that people are wanting, then people aren't going to want to live in it. So I think that it's a living structure, and we need to. I think it's a good plan. So those are my 2 cents on that.
Great, thank you. Emily, your thoughts?
I concur with Jeff. I like to see that people are wanting to live here and helping to preserve our colony homes. I also think it kind of is the best as can be done with a home like this. I know that roof lines such as the original house has are complicated. I would be okay trusting staff to work with the applicant to find a way to break up that elevation. I don't have a lot of preference one way or the other. If it's landscape, we may have to worry about its maintenance. But I think staff can work with the architect to come up with something that breaks up that elevation that I'd be okay with. I understand their concern for windows. A belly band would be fine. Maybe a change in material halfway up, which would require a belly band anyway. But for the most part, I like the plan, and I think it's a great way to preserve our colony homes.
Great, thank you. Any additional thoughts anybody wants to toss in? And Dennis, you want to add anything more?
Well, I don't know. I just, nothing, I mean, I understand the issue in which the applicant and the architect and contractor has been dealing with. For me, this looks like a Band-Aid on a building. And I don't think that that's what the historical ordinance is supposed to, or the Preservation Act is supposed to be doing. I would think other areas, San Luis Obispo would be the same. This would never happen in San Luis Obispo. And not that we want to be with them, but again, if we're here preserving, wanting to preserve things, then let's preserve them and interpret the regulation, I think, as it should be. I actually think the neighborhood, as Susan, you were speaking about the neighborhood and the house being lived in, I think that the owner had originally the best option, which was tear it down and build something that looks just like it, versus what I'm seeing is a Band-Aid put on the building, and to me, not following the character of the standard. And I wish at some time we would maybe visit this and talk about it more. I don't think everyone within the community understands how it's being interpreted. Anyway, those are my thoughts.
Thank you. And I appreciate your clarifying that. I tend to, given that there's not a huge amount of visibility of this aspect of the house, tend to want to give some latitude to the homeowner to do, to be liberal in our interpretation of the requirements for historic structures, even though this is a pretty large addition relative to the size of the home as a whole, to keep it livable in the way that the homeowner wants. I don't think it'll do major damage to the city or the neighborhood to have the character that it has. That being said, I think breaking that up a little bit visually so you don't have that just solid vertical line would be very helpful. And I would trust staff to find a cost-effective way with the client to see what might be done there.
My conflict is the discussion or the argument that it's behind the house and therefore you can't see it. We don't treat all new construction that way. We expect for there to be a complete integrity to a building on all four sides. And the argument that we could use this argument, I can't see it from the street, so why should I have to do that for? To me, that's the Band-Aid approach that I kind of object to more than anything. Just my thoughts. I'm sorry.
No need to apologize. We're here as a committee to provide those expected perspectives, and those individual perspectives are valuable, even if we don't necessarily all come to agreement about on a particular project.
Thank you, Susan.
Let me ask staff, do you have the guidance that you need to proceed? Or do we need to make a formal motion?
Just to clarify a few things, I think we need maybe a little bit more guidance on what should be on this blank wall, whether it's that belly band, a trellis, or if just landscaping would suffice. Because I don't think that the applicant probably wants to do too much, but so I think we need a little bit more guidance on that, if you wouldn't mind.
Okay.
Basically, do you want something built, or would landscaping be okay?
My personal opinion is that it probably should be built. That landscaping will change over time. So I like the idea of some kind of a trellis or something like that with a roof pitch that matches the bump outs that are already there.
Okay. Is that the consensus?
Thanks,
I
Veronica.
agree.
Yeah, I would concur in that. I think that, you know, a trellis, I mean, I'm not sure I would recognize a belly band if I ran into it. But, but I sort of get the concept here. But, you know, a first floor trellis, but I mean, there's not a lot of horizontal space there between the structures. So we don't want to do something that makes it difficult for the applicant to move around their space the way they want to move around their space. And adding a, a roof line that comes out and add something to it might create problems for them. But a trellis can be done without it requiring too much. You can plant things on it that look nice, or you could just have a nice looking trellis. But hopefully, you have some plantings that can give it a little life. I don't know. I'm assuming that trellises are consistent with this period of history as well as currently the historic period of the house. Without getting too fussed about it.
It depends how they are built and look. There certainly was a lot of trellis type features built in this era that just have a different design. They're usually a little more solid and not that, latticey stuff, but they're truly, during this era, they would have been a more solid structure. It could be attached to the ground even, and not to the house or the structure. So
Could the porch be wrapped around the side?
those are other options too, as well.
My personal guess is I would doubt it, given the site layout. I don't think there. I think if you add dimension, any substantial dimension to that side of the house, that you might be, depending on where that wall hits. If you go out past the level of the current house,
Yeah.
that you might end up interfering with sidewalk and driveway and access to the shed structures that you can see on the site plan are back there. There's not a huge amount of space to work with, given the new structure that they're getting ready to final.
You're correct.
Okay.
Mm-hmm.
So that makes me think, trellis is something that is, can be done without it being hugely costly, and would address the concern about, that it looking, potentially having a more industrial type of look to it. And, I think I'd be comfortable with that, and it wouldn't interfere with the livability of the space or be too a burdensome request on the applicant.
Okay, thank you.
And I would also be comfortable with conditions that indicate that any changes to the windows in the existing structure would need to be consistent with its historical character.
Okay. Thank you. I think I'm good. The applicant and his contractor have raised their hands, so I'm not sure if we can open that back up, but just to let you know.
Thank you. And unless the committee has an objection, I would reopen public comments so that we could hear from the applicant. He was off for a little while, and I'm glad he's been able to rejoin. Could you recognize Mr. Dawson?
Yes.
Thank you.
Yeah, I got cut off. Sorry, I missed a lot of it. I had a question about the windows that you're talking about, as far as in the existing home. I didn't hear the suggestion, so maybe you could give me a thumbnail sketch of it. Go ahead.
The suggestion there is to preserve those existing windows at all times, unless the windows aren't surviving and you want to replace those windows, then you're going to need to replace those windows with windows that are going to replicate the historic windows in the house. In other words, they're going to have wood or wood clad
Wood
and have
sash.
all the same dimensional characteristics.
Okay, they do have to make a wood clad replacement, but in the, oh God, I had it all. It's been in the requirements of the national and state and everything else. And you guys touched on it with safety, like making windows bigger for escapability, making stairwells and doorways larger for Title, was it Title 19? Was it Title 8?
24.
Whatever, is for people that need a wheelchair and all kinds of stuff. That's acceptable. It also says one of the things is to, without changing the structure, but bring it up to modern standards as far as insulation, windows that are actually help with energy conservation. And that's what I wanted to touch on. These windows are 100 years old. I tried to give them away to the guy who tore his house down the street, but he got his house torn down too quick. I'd like to save every one of this. That was my initial intent, but they don't hold cold, hot air in or out. All it does is allow dirt and everything else to blow through. They've shrunk and swollen so much. I feel like the pioneer, man. I literally have dirt floors. I can clean it, and by the end of the day, it's dirt. And it's frustrating.
Well,
so I do not want these windows. I will match those sizes. In fact, before we started this, I had a bid. They never returned my bid for, I think it's Anderson windows, that they make them it's a custom sort of window within parameters, but it's a wood-based dual paned window. They're expensive as hell. But is that something that are you going to work with me on that so I don't have to live like a caveman?
I think that we can continue this conversation offline between you
Okay.
and staff. What we're wanting to do is encourage you to preserve the windows at all possible, in all opportunities, but understanding that if the window is no longer functioning, that you'll need to replace it with something that's compatible. Now, I'll tell you right now, the building that I'm in right now has many, many 100-year-old windows, and they work great because they've been restored, but it's hard to restore a window to make it fit right and make all of the sashes work properly.
So
And if that's
during
not possible, there's options, but it's not so much the windows, it's the insulation in a structure that really makes it
no,
more
it's the
energy
windows.
efficient.
It's the windows. Trust me.
Well,
It rattles
I'll tell you,
during the wind.
We will give you flexibility to work with those windows. We'll also give you flexibility through the historic building code to have some flexibility from the energy requirements. So let's continue this discussion. I think what you heard from the staff and the DRC is that windows are an important feature of the historic fabric of the house. And so if you're going to take out all the windows and dispose of those, it is a substantial issue that we need to discuss, and you will need to replicate those windows. So I think I'm happy to even come out to the site and take a look at what the issues are. I'm happy to do that myself.
That'd be great.
Mariah, we can come out and let's talk about the windows. We'll go through each window and offer some specific guidance.
Okay, I appreciate it. The other thing that I had, because there's a big discussion on that wall, and I didn't get to hear all the options, but when sitting here looking at it, what if we put like an exterior, like design, like a three-dimensional, I don't know, they're usually made out of foam and they're plastered over, but we could do some kind of wood, ornate decorative type thing that would just break the wall up. And that way it doesn't have this barn side that you're concerned about. Would that be something that it'd be relatively inexpensive? It'll break it up. Again, no one's gonna see it, but if it makes you guys happy. And again, Dennis, I appreciate your comment with, you know, it is a Band-Aid. The original plan only added 300 square feet to the house, and you would never know. Now we had, in order to get what we need as far as space and bring it up and utilization, we had to go out that big to get what we needed. So I do appreciate your insight on that. Everything else I don't agree with. No, I'm kidding. But anyways, would the board consider that decorative type thing in the middle of that wall to just break it up? And
Can you describe that in a little bit more detail? I'm not sure.
I wasn't articulate. I'm not, like, there's down the street, a guy had one on his wall. It's in the front yard. It's kind of a rounded, I don't know. I can't even begin to describe it, but it breaks. Why the hell did he put that there? Because it doesn't look good there because it's a single story, but I think they covered up a window. I think that's what they did. But they put it there, it's all painted. I mean, it doesn't look horrible, but it wouldn't be what I would do. But on this, where it's not going to be seen and it just breaks up the long lines, it may be an option. So I can't tell you what they're called. I don't know. Jeff, are you still there? Help me, for God's sakes.
Yeah, while I have public comment open, if Mr. Schneiderite would like to add anything further on that, I'd certainly be happy to have him recognized.
Yeah, I started talking before my unmute, but I just think that keeping it kind of simple at the belly band and possibly some kind of trellis type thing could accomplish what Jerry's talking about. But I think that if we're going to go, since this is kind of a traditional bungalow, whatever is attached should, you know, be bungalow and simple.
Sound good. Thank you. I will then close public comment again and open back up to the committee. Dennis, go ahead.
Are we going to make a motion, or are we just providing direction to staff about what the expectation is?
Typically, we provide direction in the DRC on these types of actions, and we ask for your concurrence on that direction. And
Is it all right to ask for a straw vote on this particular issue of the wall that we're talking about to see where the members would go? I'm leaning towards, I mean, I would rather see nothing at all. And the comments were made by Jeff before about how he felt this was functional. And Emily made the same, Emily made the same comment. I could support that at this point. So that's why I'm asking if there would be some type of vote or some type of direct. I don't mind having the direction being leave this wall as it is.
And the DRC can do a concurrence or straw vote on that kind of topic. That's what we do in situations like that. If you want to solidify what the final direction is gonna be. And then you could even add a caveat in there to say that, work with staff to see that, when this is actually built, if it's really a problem, can we do something? It may look a lot better than this plan drawing does when it is built, because it is set back from the house. And once you see the three-dimensional characteristics, maybe if you add something to it, maybe it's going to call it out more than it needs to and not look right. I'm just
shading from the sun and the eaves. I mean, could change that dramatically, different angles, but
yeah, it's entirely up to the DRC. I don't want to plant seeds. So if you feel like there's a differing opinion on this, let's do a straw vote and see what the concurrence is on each.
Is that something that you offer to us, or can I offer that we take a straw vote that that nothing be placed on this wall, and whether other members can agree or do not agree?
I'm happy to have us have a straw vote on the topic of the wall and what members do or don't want to see on it.
All right, let's call that then. And
Yeah, so I will call that at this time. Jeff, Emily?
Yeah, I would like to leave it up to the applicant and staff to figure that out. I can go either way, but I don't know that it's necessary. I think that maybe during construction, if you were to see, and if the applicant were to see, oh, that doesn't look right, then I think that, they could make that change at the time.
Okay, Emily?
I'll agree. I personally lean more toward adding something, but I also trust staff to work with the applicant. I know that, muddies the water for them, but they're the ones who will have eyes on it during construction.
Yeah, that and my thought on that, is in a sense, it appears that we've got options that could be added later. I don't know about a belly band or that, whether that's something that could be done later. But a trellis clearly would be something independent of the building and could be added later. So in that case, my preference would be to plan to add a trellis so that it doesn't look industrial, but I would be willing to trust staff to see, let's see how it looks. And if it looks fine, if it doesn't look industrial, it looks in character, and doesn't raise things that doesn't change the experience of the neighborhood for other people who see that structure and doesn't make their homes feel more industrial, then roll with it. So I'm comfortable with that. It does leave staff in the decision of needing to make that call. Which, if you're comfortable with that.
Mhm.
It seems like that the magnitude of additional investment that we might be talking about should be relatively small.
Yes.
Okay. That's useful to know that we have that option of waiting on the timing to see how it looks. Okay. And are there any other things on which staff needs guidance?
We're good. Thank you.
Okay. Are there any other comments that members of the committee want to make before we close this item? If not, we will close this item and give our appreciation to the applicant and architect and contractor for being part of the discussion. I know that it can be very frustrating to deal with the many layers of requirements that are there between our general plan and the state things and the federal guidelines and all of the layers of expectations that one has to deal with particularly on a historic structure that has more. So we appreciate your hanging in there and being part of this dialogue with us today so that we can better understand what you want to do with the property and find a way to move things forward. Okay. Can somebody, do you need me to text Mayor Pro Tem Newsom so she can rejoin us?
Yes, please.
Okay, let me do that.
I was going to say we all have belly bands too. We don't want them, but we have them.
Embellishments. Yeah.
Isn't that a belt?
Articulation.
Yeah.
Okay, so I have alerted her that we are ready. The remaining items, we have first committee member comments and reports. And I think we can go ahead and open that up while we wait for Mayor Pro Tem Newsom to rejoin us. Do committee members have any comments or reports?
None for me.
I'll just report that I'm hearing a lot of positive comments from people about how things are developing in Atascadero. There's a sense of excitement. If you haven't checked out, for instance, the new beer joint that's that's next to Cully Market and Deli, back in there, that is an absolutely hopping place.
Mhm.
And ran into a young man last night who had just discovered it and was very excited. Met all
18
kinds of
hours.
new people,
Yeah.
It's a great place for younger and older folks to hang out. And lots of new things that are happening within our community that give people a sense of moving forward in the vibrancy and enjoyment of our community. So Mayor Pro Tem Newsom, welcome back.
Thank you.
I
I was
will-
starting to forget. I looked down at my watch and went, oh my gosh.
We're still here talking.
Sorry.
Okay,
Looks like
so
we lost Dennis as well, though. Okay.
Oh,
Like,
oops, yes, we did lose Dennis in that transition. So I will turn it back to you.
Okay. Can I have an update on our findings?
Oh, sure. So we gave staff guidance to move ahead with the project, to allow that blank wall to be built, but to wait and see what it looks like afterwards, and that it may need a trellis structure or belly band or something added to it to break up the continuous vertical lines if after construction it seems intrusive.
Okay, great.
Is that a fair summary of where we got to?
Yes.
All
Okay.
right. Thank you.
And we
Do we
also
have-
had this discussion with regard to the windows in the existing structure, that their character should be preserved. The applicant is concerned about their functionality and wants to replace them. And so Phil has agreed to make a site visit and talk about windows.
Yep.
And good, Dennis is back.
Hi,
So
Dennis.
we did complete committee member comments and reports other than yourself.
Okay.
While we were waiting for you to rejoin.
No worries. I don't have any comments or reports at this time. So thank you. That was an efficient use of time. Director's report.
Yes, well, we don't have another hearing on this calendar for you yet, but I'm sure something will come our way soon. But I'll echo what Susan's comments were. There are a lot of really neat projects that are happening that are coming together. And we did receive an official submittal for the Barrel Creek project. I think I want to mention that. And that ultimately will be coming to the Design Review Committee soon before it heads on to the Planning Commission and ultimately the City Council. And that's the project on the west side of Highway 101 at Del Rio. Really interesting project with a hotel and experiential and residential and some neat stuff. And we also are moving forward with developing construction plans for our downtown infrastructure enhancement, which is a really exciting project. That's the glue that's going to hold these new businesses together and support new business ventures for our downtown, which is fantastic. Glad to see that move along, and we're getting some funding sources together for that too as well, which is really exciting. But unless you've got questions for me, that's all I'm going to mention for now. And as the calendar comes together for other items, we'll keep you informed.
Perfect. Sounds good.
Thank you.
All right. So with that, I guess anything else to add?
I would just add that I will be out of town after the council meeting August 10th. I will be out of town for basically the rest of August, coming back in sometime in the vicinity of Labor Day. So,
All right. Have fun. Everybody else, I guess we'll wait to hear when the next DRC meeting is. And in the meantime, everyone enjoy your summer.
A beautiful day today.
good. Thank you.
All right. Meeting adjourned. Bye.
Bye, everybody.
Bye.